He lived for his family, but he died because of betrayal. Who would have thought loyalty could cost him his life? September 25, 2020, 8:15 p.m. Jamar Lewis, a hard-working delivery driver, was out on what he believed to be another routine job. He had dedicated his life to building a future for his wife, Chanel, and the small delivery business he worked tirelessly to grow. But that night, everything changed. Jamar was a man defined by his devotion. He provided for his family, pouring every ounce of his energy into his work. Yet, behind the scenes, the love and loyalty he gave so freely were being betrayed in the most unimaginable way. On this fateful night, Jamar's body was discovered in the back of his own delivery truck. A life taken, a dream shattered, and a family torn apart. The investigation would uncover a tangled web of infidelity, ambition, and greed. Was this a crime born of passion, or a calculated plan to erase him from the picture entirely? This is the story of a man whose love and trust were met with deception, and the deadly consequences that followed. This is the tragic tale of Jamar Lewis, a delivery driver whose life was cut short in a shocking act of betrayal. Jamar Lewis was born on March 15, 1987, in Tucson, Arizona. Growing up in a close-knit community, he was raised by a single mother who instilled in him the importance of hard work and perseverance. From an early age, he learned that dedication and determination could overcome any obstacle. After finishing high school, Jamar started working at a moving company in Phoenix. It was there that he began to dream of building something of his own, a business that could provide not only for himself but for the family he hoped to have one day. In 2016, after years of saving diligently, he founded Lewis Hauling and Delivery Services with $25,000 he had carefully set aside. Jamar's work ethic quickly set him apart. By 2023, his company had completed over 200 successful deliveries across Brooklyn, earning a reputation for reliability and professionalism. Clients frequently praised his attention to detail and his commitment to delivering exceptional service. In April 2018, Jamar married Chanel Jackson, a woman he described as his perfect partner. Together, they relocated to Brooklyn in pursuit of better opportunities. To those who knew him, Jamar's love for Chanel was evident in everything he did. He often spoke about building a future together, one delivery at a time. But life wasn't without its challenges. Despite his tireless efforts, financial records revealed mounting debt. Chanel's preference for luxury strained their modest income, but Jamar remained steadfast in his commitment to their life together. He believed that with enough hard work, they could overcome anything. Little did he know, his devotion would ultimately lead to his downfall. Jamar's life was defined by resilience and determination, but behind closed doors, cracks were beginning to form in the very foundation he had worked so hard to build. Chanel Jackson, born on November 2, 1989, in Harlem, New York, grew up surrounded by dreams of luxury and success. Her mother, Nadine, a hard-working school administrator, instilled the importance of ambition, which Chanel embraced wholeheartedly. As a teenager, Chanel often envisioned a life far beyond her modest upbringing. Her charm and confidence set her apart, and friends described her as someone destined for bigger things. In March 2020, Chanel began working at Urban Oasis Spa in Manhattan, a high-end establishment catering to the wealthy. Her role gave her access to the lifestyle she had always admired, earning a base salary of $42,000 plus commissions and tips from affluent clients. However, Chanel's financial habits revealed her longing for more. Frequent purchases from luxury retailers, upscale dining, and indulgent spa treatments often left her struggling to stay within her means. Her dissatisfaction with her modest lifestyle only grew as she became immersed in a world of wealth and privilege. Her marriage to Jamar, while seemingly stable at first, began to reflect these tensions. Jamar's practicality and focus on building their future clashed with Chanel's desire for immediate gratification and status. The emotional distance between them widened as her pursuit of affluence deepened, setting the stage for choices that would ultimately shatter their lives. Khalil Dupree, born June 10, 1990, grew up in the lap of luxury as the son of a powerful Manhattan real estate mogul. His family's company, Dupree Properties LLC, controlled a sprawling $1.8 billion empire, granting Khalil a life few could imagine. Living in a penthouse at the exclusive Riviera residences, Khalil thrived in Manhattan's elite social circles. Known for extravagant spending and high-profile parties, his lavish lifestyle attracted constant attention. Khalil exuded charm and confidence but carried an air of entitlement that often veiled his reckless tendencies. His reputation for pursuing married women earned him notoriety. To Khalil, relationships were a game of conquest, with each affair feeding his need for control and validation. It was this mindset that led him to Chanel Jackson. Their paths crossed in April 2020 during a spa appointment at Urban Oasis. What began as casual flirtation quickly spiraled into something deeper. Drawn by her beauty and ambition, Khalil pursued Chanel relentlessly, offering her a glimpse into the life of wealth and privilege she had always desired. What neither foresaw was how their choices would entangle them in a web of betrayal and tragedy. What began as a chance meeting between Chanel Jackson and Khalil Dupree at Urban Oasis Spa in April 2020 soon spiraled into a clandestine affair that grew more intense with each passing week. Security footage documented Khalil's increasingly frequent visits to the spa, always timed to coincide with Chanel's shifts. He arrived with the air of a man who knew how to get what he wanted, exuding charm and confidence that seemed tailor-made to disarm her. By early June, their meetings extended far beyond the spa's polished walls. Upscale restaurants in Manhattan, private lounges, and luxury hotel suites became the backdrop for their growing relationship. Khalil's ability to navigate exclusive spaces and his willingness to share them with Chanel offered her a taste of the life she had always craved but never experienced. These moments were carefully planned by Khalil, each one designed to deepen her reliance on him and solidify their connection. Khalil's wealth played a pivotal role in fueling their secret encounters. Bank statements revealed repeated cash withdrawals ranging from $2,000 to $3,000 during Chanel's work hours. These funds were used to finance extravagant dinners, exclusive events, and lavish gifts. He made no effort to hide his intentions, treating Chanel to experiences far removed from her daily reality. Expensive bottles of champagne, chauffeur-driven rides through the city, and designer shopping sprees became the norm. For Chanel, these outings were more than just indulgences, they were a window into a world she had only dreamed of. Khalil's gestures, though grand, were not purely altruistic. He was deliberate in his approach, ensuring that every experience reminded her of what she lacked in her marriage. His words often carried a pointed comparison to Jamar's modest earnings, subtly eroding her loyalty. "You deserve more than struggling to get by," one message read. "I can give you the life you were meant to live." Chanel began to internalize these comparisons, seeing Khalil as the solution to the dissatisfaction she felt in her life. Their exchanges grew more intimate, and Chanel's phone became a repository of their deepening bond. Recovered text messages painted a picture of Khalil's calculated charm and persuasive tactics. Promises of penthouse apartments, designer wardrobes, and luxury vacations filled their exchanges. Khalil's charisma and the allure of the lifestyle he represented made it increasingly difficult for Chanel to separate fleeting attraction from genuine ambition. The affair reached new heights as Khalil became bolder in his pursuit. He began timing his visits to the spa to coincide with Chanel's breaks, often whisking her away for a few stolen hours. Their relationship became a tangled web of secrecy, with Chanel carefully crafting excuses to explain her extended absences. Friends and co-workers noticed changes in her demeanor, the designer accessories she suddenly sported, the glow of someone who had been swept up in something thrilling yet dangerous. For Chanel, these messages became both a temptation and a turning point. Khalil offered her a version of life she had always dreamed of but at the cost of everything she had built with Jamar. Their meetings grew increasingly clandestine, conducted under the cover of lies that shielded her double life. She felt trapped between the comfort of familiarity and the allure of the unknown. By late summer, the affair's intensity blurred the lines between fleeting desire and calculated betrayal. Khalil's promises loomed larger, each one nudging Chanel closer to a decision that would alter all their lives. While Jamar worked tirelessly to provide for their future, Chanel and Khalil continued to weave a relationship built on deception and extravagance. This dangerous liaison was no longer just a secret, it was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. By July 2020, Jamar Lewis began noticing subtle changes in his marriage. Unusual charges appeared on their joint bank account, transactions at Saks Fifth Avenue and upscale Manhattan restaurants, places he had never visited. The inconsistencies gnawed at him, but he hesitated to jump to conclusions. Jamar had always trusted Chanel, believing in the foundation they had built together. Still, these red flags planted seeds of doubt that he couldn't ignore. Feeling the weight of uncertainty, Jamar turned to his best friend, Daryl Coleman. Daryl had been his confidant for years, someone who knew him better than most. Over beers one evening, Jamar poured out his concerns. Daryl later recalled the conversation vividly, describing Jamar as torn between his desire to trust Chanel and the nagging evidence that something was amiss. Despite his unease, Jamar clung to the hope that there was an innocent explanation. That hope unraveled on the night of September 10, 2020. While using Chanel's unlocked phone to check a client address, Jamar stumbled upon a string of explicit messages between her and Khalil Dupree. The words on the screen confirmed his worst fears, leaving him stunned and betrayed. That evening, Jamar confronted Chanel in their apartment. The argument that followed was heated, their voices rising enough for neighbors to hear through the walls. Witnesses described hearing Jamar's pained words, questioning the loyalty and love he had believed in for years. The confrontation marked a turning point in Jamar's life. The man who had worked tirelessly for his family was now faced with a harsh reality he couldn't ignore. What had once been a stable, albeit modest, marriage was now shrouded in distrust and heartbreak, setting the stage for a series of events that would spiral out of control. In the days following the confrontation, Chanel's behavior took a calculated turn. While she initially appeared remorseful, her actions soon revealed a different story. She began avoiding Jamar, citing long shifts at the spa as an excuse to stay out late. However, these extended hours often ended with her meeting Khalil at luxury hotels or upscale bars. Her reluctance to engage in meaningful conversations at home further deepened the divide between them. To maintain the appearance of normalcy, Chanel doubled down on social media, posting curated photos of a happy marriage. Her captions, filled with gratitude for Jamar, painted a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing behind closed doors. Friends and acquaintances saw these posts as proof of a loving relationship, unaware of the growing cracks beneath the surface. Behind the scenes, Chanel confided in Khalil about the confrontation. Their text exchanges showed her expressing fear over what Jamar might do next. Khalil, ever the opportunist, assured her he would handle the situation, subtly planting the idea that Jamar was an obstacle to their future. His influence over Chanel grew stronger as he fed into her insecurities, convincing her that their relationship was worth any risk. Financial records from this period revealed a sharp increase in Chanel's spending. Luxury items, spa treatments, and fine dining appeared on her credit card statements with alarming frequency. Khalil's bank withdrawals coincided with these purchases, suggesting he was funding her lifestyle to keep her tethered to his world. Despite her attempts to distance herself emotionally, Chanel's guilt manifested in small ways. Co-workers at the spa noticed her distracted demeanor, while neighbors overheard muffled arguments from the apartment late at night. These moments hinted at a woman torn between two lives, unable to fully sever ties with Jamar yet unwilling to give up her affair with Khalil. As Jamar tried to salvage their marriage, arranging counseling sessions and planning surprise dinners, Chanel continued to live a double life. Each attempt he made was met with indifference or deflection, leaving him increasingly isolated. The man who had built his life around trust and loyalty found himself trapped in a marriage that no longer reflected those values. Chanel's next moves were a mix of calculated deception and growing desperation. While she sought refuge in Khalil's promises of a better life, she couldn't escape the weight of her choices. Her actions set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in a tragedy none of them could foresee. The events of September 22, 2020, unfolded like a calculated play, each piece falling into place as if orchestrated by an unseen hand. That morning, Jamar Lewis woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. A new delivery job, secured through an urgent late-night call, seemed like the break he had been waiting for. He told Daryl Coleman, his closest friend, that this could be a turning point, something to stabilize his business during the rough patch. With cautious optimism, Jamar rented a delivery truck, determined to make the best of the opportunity. At exactly 2:15 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Jamar pulling up to the address in Queens provided by the client. The property was unassuming, situated on a quiet, isolated street. It seemed like the perfect spot for a legitimate delivery, and, as it turned out, the perfect spot for a trap. As Jamar stepped out of the truck, the quiet neighborhood seemed still. Too still. At 2:45 p.m., a neighbor, working in his backyard nearby, reported hearing two distinct gunshots. The sound shattered the silence, followed by the screech of tires as a black SUV sped away from the scene. The neighbor peeked over the fence but saw no signs of movement at the property, dismissing it as a possible car backfiring or an isolated incident. Inside the delivery truck, Jamar lay lifeless, his body slumped against the interior wall. He had been shot twice in the chest at close range. The precision suggested an execution rather than a random act of violence. The perpetrators, efficient and cold in their actions, abandoned him in the truck and fled in the SUV, disappearing into the sprawling city within minutes. For 3 days, the truck sat in a delivery depot, unnoticed amidst the constant movement of vehicles. It wasn't until a depot employee, tasked with organizing the lot, approached the vehicle that Jamar's body was discovered. The employee, shaken by the sight, immediately called the authorities. Investigators arriving at the scene found Jamar's wallet and phone untouched, ruling out robbery as a motive. However, the cash he had withdrawn for the job was missing, a clue that hinted at premeditation. The murder scene was grim but telling. The truck's interior bore no signs of struggle, suggesting that Jamar had been caught off guard. Forensic experts noted the deliberate nature of the crime: no shell casings, no fingerprints, no immediate evidence left behind. Whoever committed the act had planned it carefully, leaving as little trace as possible. Surveillance footage from nearby intersections offered the first lead. A black SUV, its license plate partially obscured, was seen leaving the area shortly after the reported gunshots. Investigators tracked its route through the city using traffic cameras, but the trail eventually went cold. The vehicle vanished into the maze of New York streets, leaving detectives to piece together the puzzle with little to go on. Jamar's family, upon learning of his death, was devastated. His mother, who had watched her son work tirelessly to build a better life, demanded answers. Daryl, consumed with guilt, replayed their last conversation over and over, wondering if he could have done something to stop it. Chanel's reaction, however, raised eyebrows. While she expressed sorrow publicly, her demeanor lacked the raw grief expected from a grieving spouse. Whispers began circulating among friends and family, questioning the circumstances leading up to Jamar's murder. As investigators delved deeper, the timeline of that fateful day began to solidify. Jamar's decision to take the job had been a last-minute one, spurred by a call from an unknown number promising a lucrative payout. The property where the crime occurred was rented under a false identity, with cash payments ensuring anonymity. Witness statements, forensic evidence, and digital trails would soon begin to expose the carefully laid plan behind Jamar's murder, unraveling a story of betrayal and greed that no one could have anticipated. The NYPD's Homicide Division, led by Detective Serena Monroe, took on the case with meticulous determination. Monroe, known for her unrelenting pursuit of justice, quickly assembled a team to piece together the fragmented details surrounding Jamar's death. The investigation began with surveillance footage, phone records, and forensic evidence left at the scene. What initially appeared to be a robbery gone wrong soon revealed layers of premeditated malice. The first significant breakthrough came when forensic analysts identified a partial fingerprint on the interior of the delivery truck. The print matched Malik Johnson, a man with a history of petty crimes. Investigators discovered that Malik had been hired sporadically for unregistered security work connected to properties managed by Dupree Properties LLC. While Malik's link to the scene seemed coincidental at first, the connection to Dupree's business network raised suspicions of something more sinister. This unusual connection led the team to investigate key individuals associated with the company's management and influence. Khalil Dupree's name surfaced during background checks due to his known history of reckless behavior and associations with questionable individuals. To corroborate Malik's possible motives and connections, investigators subpoenaed cell tower data around the crime scene. Khalil Dupree's phone was flagged as one of the devices pinging near the location at the time of the murder, despite his claim of being elsewhere. This inconsistency raised suspicions, prompting detectives to scrutinize his activities further. Further evidence came in the form of text messages recovered from Chanel's phone. Conversations between Khalil and Chanel revealed detailed discussions about Jamar, including phrases like, "removing the problem," and "he won't stand in our way much longer." These messages painted a chilling picture of a calculated plan, with Khalil in control and Chanel complicit in its execution. Forensic evidence further tied Khalil to the crime. Trace amounts of his DNA were found on the truck's door handle, suggesting prior contact with the vehicle. This discovery raised questions about how Khalil, a wealthy socialite, might have been involved so directly. Combined with Malik's fingerprint and financial irregularities, the narrative began to shift toward a calculated conspiracy. Detective Monroe's team meticulously reconstructed the events leading up to Jamar's death, connecting each piece of evidence to paint a comprehensive picture. What began as a seemingly isolated act of violence now revealed a web of betrayal, manipulation, and greed. Khalil's connection to Malik, the damning phone records, and the recovered DNA turned what was once circumstantial into a compelling case for premeditated murder. The turning point came in early October 2020, 2 weeks after Jamar Lewis's body was discovered. NYPD officers arrested Malik Johnson at his sister's apartment in the Bronx. Malik, visibly shaken, initially denied any involvement but soon admitted to being at the scene after hours of interrogation. Detectives noted his conflicting statements and documented his nervous behavior. Despite his denial, the fingerprint evidence found on the truck and bank records linking him to a recent $10,000 cash deposit tied him firmly to the crime. DeAndre Collins, the second suspect, was apprehended days later during a routine traffic stop in Queens. Officers discovered a concealed weapon matching the type used in the murder. When confronted with evidence of his connection to Malik and Khalil Dupree, DeAndre refused to cooperate, demanding a lawyer immediately. His silence only deepened suspicions, but surveillance footage showing his black SUV near the crime scene was enough to hold him in custody. The final arrest came on October 10, 2020. Khalil Dupree was taken into custody at his penthouse in Manhattan. The raid, carried out at dawn, was swift and calculated. Khalil, dressed in a tailored suit as if anticipating the moment, offered no resistance but maintained his innocence. "This is a misunderstanding," he told the arresting officers. "You'll regret this." Detectives seized burner phones, financial documents, and a laptop containing encrypted files, all of which would later serve as damning evidence. Chanel Jackson's arrest followed shortly after. She was brought in from her workplace at Urban Oasis Spa. Witnesses described her as stunned but cooperative. During questioning, she broke down, admitting her knowledge of Khalil's plan but insisting she never believed he would go through with it. "I thought it was all talk," she told detectives. "I didn't think anyone would actually get hurt." The trial began in February 2021, drawing significant media attention. Khalil Dupree, Malik Johnson, DeAndre Collins, and Chanel Jackson faced a packed courtroom. Each had entered a plea of not guilty, but the prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Michelle Graves, presented a meticulously built case that unraveled their defense. Chanel's testimony became the linchpin of the trial. Taking the stand on the third day, she appeared visibly distraught. As the courtroom fell silent, she began recounting her involvement in the events leading to Jamar's murder. "I was stuck," Chanel began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Khalil made me feel like I didn't have a choice. He promised me everything, a better life, freedom from the struggles Jamar and I were facing. He said Jamar was the obstacle standing in our way." The jury leaned in as Chanel described how Khalil orchestrated the murder. "He said he had people who could handle it," she continued, tears streaming down her face. "He told me not to worry, that it would look like an accident. I was scared, but I didn't stop him. I should have stopped him." The prosecution presented text messages between Chanel and Khalil, further corroborating her testimony. One message from Khalil read, "Everything is in place. Just make sure he takes the job." Another chilling exchange showed Khalil reassuring Chanel after the murder, "It's done. We're free now." When asked why she didn't come forward after Jamar's death, Chanel broke down. "I was terrified," she said, her voice cracking. "Khalil said he'd ruin me if I talked. He said no one would believe me, that they'd see me as just another greedy wife." The courtroom was tense as Chanel detailed Khalil's manipulation, painting him as the mastermind behind the plot. She explained how he recruited Malik and DeAndre, offering them large sums of money to execute the plan. "He made it sound so simple," she said. "Like it was just business." As Chanel's testimony concluded, the defense cross-examined her, attempting to paint her as a willing participant. "You knew what was happening, didn't you?" Khalil's attorney pressed. "You benefited from this plan, didn't you?" Chanel's voice broke as she responded. "I didn't benefit from anything. I lost everything. I lost my husband. I lost my life. I'm standing here because I believed someone who didn't care about anything but himself." Chanel's confession, coupled with the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution, left little doubt about the defendant's guilt. Forensic evidence tied Khalil to the crime scene, and financial records traced payments to Malik and DeAndre. Surveillance footage and text messages filled in the gaps, creating a clear narrative of betrayal and premeditation. Khalil Dupree remained impassive throughout the trial, but his carefully constructed defense unraveled under the weight of the evidence. The jury's reaction to Chanel's testimony was palpable, her remorse and emotional breakdown left an indelible mark. When the defense cross-examined Chanel, they attempted to discredit her, painting her as a willing participant motivated by greed. But her raw emotion and detailed recollections left a lasting impression on the jury. Her final words on the stand were a haunting reflection of her guilt. "I thought I was escaping a life I didn't want. But now I've destroyed everything, including myself." The sentences were delivered in March 2021. Khalil Dupree received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, reflecting the calculated and premeditated nature of his crimes. Malik Johnson and DeAndre Collins, having cooperated partially with investigators, were each sentenced to 25 years in prison for second-degree murder and conspiracy. Chanel Jackson, despite her cooperation and testimony, was sentenced to 15 years for her role in aiding and abetting the murder, a punishment that underscored the gravity of her betrayal and complicity. Jamar's death sent shockwaves through the Brooklyn community. Known as a hard-working man with a kind heart, he had touched many lives through his delivery business and his willingness to help neighbors in need. Vigils were held in his honor, with friends and family sharing heartfelt stories about his generosity and unwavering determination to build a better life. But the tragedy of Jamar's story left lingering questions. Could his murder have been prevented? How do we reconcile the actions of those we trust most when they betray us so deeply? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Jamar's situation? Do you think justice was truly served? And don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that explore the depths of human decisions and their consequences. How could a love story turn into a tragedy? And at what cost do we pursue the lives we desire?